Muammar Gaddafi seized power in Libya in 1969 through a military coup that overthrew King Idris I. He ruled the country for more than 4 decades under a system he called the Jamahiriya, banning political parties and concentrating authority around himself. His government was linked to international incidents, including the 1988 Lockerbie bombing, which led to years of sanctions against Libya. In 2011, protests against his rule began during the Arab Spring and escalated into a civil war. NATO launched airstrikes against Libyan government forces after the United Nations authorized military intervention to protect civilians. As rebel forces advanced, Gaddafi fled the capital, Tripoli. In October 2011, he was captured near his hometown of Sirte after his convoy was struck during fighting. Videos showed him injured and in custody of rebel fighters. Shortly after his capture, he was shot and killed. His death marked the collapse of his 42-year rule. Ion Antonescu ruled Romania during World War II after seizing power in 1940 and aligning the country with Nazi Germany. He sent Romanian troops to fight alongside Hitler during the invasion of the Soviet Union and supported military operations on the Eastern Front. Under his leadership, Romanian authorities carried out mass killings and deportations of Jews and Roma, particularly in regions such as Transnistria, where tens of thousands died from executions, starvation, and disease. As Soviet forces advanced in 1944, King Michael I ordered Antonescu's arrest in a royal coup that switched Romania's allegiance to the Allies. After the war, he was tried by a Romanian People's Tribunal for war crimes and crimes against humanity. He was found guilty for his role in massacres and deportations that led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands. In 1946, Ion Antonescu was executed by firing squad. Benito Mussolini came to power in Italy in 1922 after the March on Rome and established a fascist dictatorship that abolished opposition parties and controlled the press. He aligned Italy with Nazi Germany and entered World War II on Hitler's side in 1940. Military defeats and the Allied invasion of Italy weakened his rule, and in 1943 he was removed from office and arrested by members of his own government. German forces later rescued him and installed him as head of a puppet state in northern Italy known as the Italian Social Republic. In April 1945, as Allied forces advanced and the war neared its end, Mussolini attempted to flee towards Switzerland with his companion Clara Petacci. He was captured by Italian partisans near Lake Como. The following day, he was executed by firing squad. His body was transported to Milan and hung upside down in a public square where crowds gathered and desecrated the corpse. His death marked the collapse of fascist rule in Italy. Thomas Sankara took power in Burkina Faso in 1983 through a military coup and renamed the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, meaning land of upright people. He launched nationwide vaccination campaigns, reduced the salaries of officials, banned female genital mutilation, and promoted women into government positions. He rejected foreign aid dependency, criticized Western influence in Africa, and called for African nations to refuse repayment of international debt. His reforms created internal opposition within the military and political elite. In 1987, during a coup led by his close associate Blaise Compaoré, armed soldiers stormed a meeting he was attending in the capital, Ouagadougou. Sankara was shot and killed along with several officials. He was 37 years old at the time of his death. His body was buried in an unmarked grave, and the circumstances of the killing were officially investigated decades later. Francisco Macias Nguema became the first president of Equatorial Guinea after independence from Spain in 1968 and soon declared himself president for life. He banned political opposition, closed churches and schools, and ordered the execution or imprisonment of perceived enemies. During his rule, tens of thousands of people were killed or fled the country, and a large portion of the population went into exile. By 1979, economic collapse and internal repression had weakened his control. In August of that year, his nephew, Teodoro Obiang, led a military coup against him. Macias attempted to resist, but was captured by forces loyal to the new regime. He was put on trial for genocide, mass murder, and human rights abuses. He was found guilty and executed by firing squad in 1979. His death ended 11 years of violent rule in Equatorial Guinea. Nicolae Ceausescu ruled Romania from 1965 as head of the Communist Party and built a centralized state that restricted travel, censored media, and used the secret police, known as the Sirte, to monitor citizens. During the 1980s, he ordered strict austerity measures to repay foreign debt, leading to food shortages, electricity rationing, and widespread public hardship. In December 1989, protests began in the city of Timisoara and spread rapidly across the country. Ceausescu attempted to address a crowd in Bucharest, but the speech turned into open public dissent broadcast live on television. The military eventually withdrew support for him. He and his wife Elena fled the capital by helicopter, but were captured by army forces. They were subjected to a rapid military trial on charges including genocide and abuse of power. Both were found guilty and sentenced to death. On December 25, 1989, Nicolae Ceausescu and his wife were executed by firing squad. The execution was filmed and later broadcast. His death marked the end of communist rule in Romania. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had been Iran's supreme leader since 1989, holding ultimate power over the military, judiciary, and government policy. In late February 2026, a joint United States-Israeli missile and airstrike campaign targeted top Iranian leadership in Tehran, and Iranian state media confirmed he was killed in these strikes at his leadership compound. A 40-day national mourning period was declared, and reports stated several senior officials and family members also died in the attack. After his death, Iran's constitution triggered an interim leadership arrangement. A three-member interim leadership council took over the supreme leader's duties, including cleric Ayatollah Ali, alongside Iran's president and chief justice. Some unverified reports circulated claiming Arafi was also killed in subsequent strikes, but those reports have not been confirmed by state media or major international news outlets and remain unclear. This sequence of events represents one of the most dramatic leadership decapitations in modern Middle Eastern history. Rafael Trujillo ruled the Dominican Republic from 1930 after seizing power through military control and election manipulation. He maintained authority through a vast security network, personal loyalty structures, and strict repression of political opponents. In 1937, his forces carried out the Parsley Massacre along the Haitian border, killing thousands of Haitians in a state-directed ethnic purge. His regime controlled the press, enriched his family through state resources, and dominated nearly every sector of the country's economy. By the late 1950s, internal opposition and international pressure increased, particularly after the attempted assassination of Venezuelan President Romulo Betancourt, which led to regional condemnation and sanctions. On May 30, 1961, Trujillo's car was ambushed on a highway outside Santo Domingo by a group of Dominican conspirators. He was shot multiple times and killed at the scene. His assassination ended 31 years of personalist dictatorship and destabilized the country's political order. In 2003, the United States invaded Iraq after the administration of George Bush claimed Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction and posed a security threat following the 9/11 attacks. Officials from the United States also suggested possible links between Iraq and terrorist groups, although no operational connection to 9/11 was later proven. Coalition forces entered Iraq in March 2003 and removed Saddam's government within weeks. No stockpiles of weapons of mass destruction were found after the invasion. Saddam went into hiding and was captured near Tikrit inside a concealed underground space known as a spider hole, a narrow chamber covered by dirt and a metal lid. He had a pistol but did not fire it. During his trial, he refused to recognize the court and declared himself the legitimate president of Iraq. He was convicted for ordering the killing of 148 Shia villagers in Du jail. In 1988, his forces had also carried out a chemical gas attack on the Kurdish town of Halabja, killing thousands of civilians with mustard gas and nerve agents. He was executed by hanging in Baghdad in 2006. Hideki Tojo served as Prime Minister of Japan during much of World War II and was in office when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941. As a senior military general, he played a central role in directing Japan's wartime government and expanding military operations across Asia and the Pacific. Under his leadership, Japanese forces carried out campaigns in China and Southeast Asia that included mass civilian casualties and prisoner of war abuses. After Japan surrendered in 1945, Tojo attempted suicide by shooting himself in the chest when American forces arrived to arrest him, but he survived the attempt and was taken into custody. He was later tried before the International Military Tribunal for the Far East in Tokyo on charges including war crimes and crimes against humanity. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. In 1948, Hideki Tojo was executed by hanging. Samuel Doe seized power in Liberia in 1980 through a military coup that overthrew and killed President William R. Pio Tolbert Jr., ending more than a century of rule by the Americo-Liberian elite. After taking control, Doe suspended the constitution, banned political activity, and ruled through the military. His government was accused of ethnic favoritism, election manipulation, and violent crackdowns on opponents. In 1989, a civil war began when rebel forces led by Charles Taylor launched an armed uprising against his government. As fighting reached the capital, Monrovia, Day sought protection at the headquarters of a West African peacekeeping force. In 1990, he was captured by a rival rebel faction led by Prince Johnson. Video footage later showed Doe being interrogated and abused while in captivity. He was tortured and killed shortly after his capture. His death marked a major turning point in Liberia's civil war and deepened the country's instability. Mohammad Najibullah became president of Afghanistan in 1987 during the Soviet-backed communist government and remained in power until 1992 after Soviet forces had already withdrawn from the country. He relied heavily on security forces and intelligence networks to maintain control while fighting multiple Mujahideen factions during the Afghan Civil War. When his government collapsed in 1992, he was prevented from leaving the country and sought refuge inside a United Nations compound in Kabul. He remained inside that UN compound for 4 years under protection, while different factions fought for control of the capital. In 1996, the Taliban captured Kabul. Taliban fighters entered the UN compound, seized Najibullah and his brother, and removed them from the building. He was beaten, tortured, and executed shortly afterward. His body was publicly displayed in Kabul. His killing marked the Taliban's consolidation of power in the capital. Vidkun Quisling took power in Norway in 1942 after Germany occupied the country during World War II. Backed by Nazi authorities, he led a collaborationist government that aligned Norway with Adolf Hitler's regime. His administration assisted German forces, supported anti-Jewish measures, and helped deport Norwegian Jews to concentration camps. His name later became synonymous with the word traitor in several languages. When Germany surrendered in 1945, Quisling was arrested by Norwegian authorities. He was charged with high treason, murder, and financial crimes linked to his cooperation with the Nazi occupation. After a public trial, he was found guilty. In October 1945, Vidkun Quisling was executed by firing squad at Akershus fortress in Oslo. His execution marked the legal end of Norway's collaborationist regime. Ngo Dinh Diem became president of South Vietnam in 1955 after a referendum removed former Emperor Ngo Dinh. He ruled through a centralized government that relied heavily on family members, particularly his brother Ngo Dinh Diem, and used security forces to suppress political opponents and Buddhist protesters. His administration faced increasing unrest in the early 1960s, especially after government forces opened fire on Buddhist demonstrators, triggering nationwide protests known as the Buddhist Crisis. As instability grew, senior South Vietnamese military officers organized a coup in 1963. The United States had withdrawn support for Diem's continued leadership amid concerns over governance and public unrest. On November 1, 1963, the military seized control of key installations in Saigon. Diem and his brother attempted to escape but were captured the following day. While being transported in an armored personnel carrier, both were shot and killed by officers involved in the coup. His death marked a major turning point in South Vietnam's political instability during the Vietnam War. Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in 1933 and established a totalitarian Nazi state that eliminated political opposition, controlled the media, and expanded military power. He initiated World War II in 1939 by invading Poland and directed a war that spread across Europe. His regime carried out the Holocaust, during which 6 million Jews and millions of others were systematically murdered in concentration and extermination camps. By April 1945, Soviet forces had surrounded Berlin. Hitler retreated to his underground Führer bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery. As German defenses collapsed and surrender became inevitable, he chose not to be captured. On April 30, 1945, Adolf Hitler shot himself inside the bunker. His body was burned by aides according to his prior instructions. His death marked the final collapse of Nazi leadership in Germany.